Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome once again to The Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. My name is Chris Morgan. I'm the knight, here with my squires, Jonathan Ian Manzur.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. Scott Thurlow.
Checkmate.
And Stephen Ormosi.
Happy Death Day.
Thank you. And tonight, we actually reviewed one of mine, if not my favorite movie. It's Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. I did request this because I turned 50 this year. And we're going to get into... I'll kind of get into why I chose it later, and there's no irony to it, really. But Scott, do you have a funny logline to start us off with?
Yes, of course. You might be a knight, or a squire, or a juggler, or a lowly street sweeper, but sooner or later, you will dance with the reaper.
Very nice. And Steve-O, would you like to tell us the plot of this?
Sure. It's a movie that has a lot of characters, but I think a lot of it has to do with Antonius Bloch's kind of game of chess with death that's introduced like right in the beginning. He convinces Death that to play a game of chess, and as long as they're playing, he won't take him. And then if he wins, he gets to stay alive, and if he doesn't, he just doesn't. I guess it's a simplification, but like he has a squire named Jans that he is wandering around with, and also he comes to meet a bunch of people who are kind of living their everyday lives. They go about
during the plague.
Right. The plague is happening.
As
the plague is rampaging, as it were. It's kind of this story about life and death during the plague.
Like during plague time.
Yeah.
That'd be a good logline.
Yeah.
Go on.
They go through all of these like kind of just little little philosophical little
jaunts,
ramblings amongst themselves. Eventually, the juggler and his wife and their little son that they meet are kind of allowed to escape death's embrace, but the rest of the crew go to
they dance with the reaper.
Antonius's castle, which is where death finally comes to take them, and I assume this is all a metaphor for them all dying of the plague and a small family being allowed to kind of
escaping and living through it.
Or a terrible breakfast.
Or just an awful breakfast.
Yeah.
Which happened a lot in those times. So.
I was gonna say, if you've seen Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, it was the salmon mousse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So.
But yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. It's kind of a stage for all of these interesting philosophical discussions that everybody kind of has throughout. And yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. The plot is pretty good, although I think it's more of, as I mentioned, like a vehicle for what Bergman himself was trying to say, or I don't know if he wrote the script. I assume he did.
He did.
Mm-hmm. So like I think it's more of a vehicle for like talking about these issues of life and death, and especially during that time of the plague. And you know, I'm coming down on a strong 2, and that's pretty much where I'm at the moment. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably Bergman's most famous film in general, I would think. Most well-known, I guess. And yeah, so we did one other one earlier, as I think at the start of our foreign push last spring. So, yes, it's basically...
What was that one
it was
called?
The Magician, I believe. But a lot, like many of his films, maybe Chris, you can speak more, but it's basically a string of vignettes that are that have a storyline to them, but it's the knight and his squire like going through this, like meeting the troupe, the actor and his wife and their friend, and then the blacksmith in village, and like engaging in philosophical, metaphysical conversations while Antonius plays chess with death and attempting to prolong searching for answers. Right, we're getting a lot to it in themes, I would think, in a second. But yeah, I agree. with you, Steve-O, for score-wise at least, that because of the nature of, like, again, stringing along these little set pieces pretty much that are mainly composed of characters talking to each other, discussing, again, God, life, death, etc., it's all fine. So I think a solid 2 is also where I'm coming down, because it holds together very well. It's just that it's not enough for a 3. I know, Chris, you're probably, given your love for this film, you might make a case for it, and almost certainly you're going to give it a 3. But I think as it stands on paper and removed a bit from it, a damn solid 2 is what I'm going to give it. So,
The knight and his squire reminded me quite a bit of Don Quixote
I see it.
and his squire, but almost the inverse of the knight in there, where Don Quixote was a humorous character attempting to show the mockery of a chivalrous person in the modern age. This is French existentialist type knight.
Yeah. That's funny.
I'm about to die. What is the meaning of life? But the squire role is actually very similar, kind of very down to earth, very humorous character there, although this is a much darker tale. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, perhaps it's not a fault of the film. It's just a beautiful film. And my ADD rattled mind of the modern generation, it's a bit of a slow film. And I don't know. I think it's interesting. It didn't work for me as I think it was intended to, but that's not a problem. I think it's more a problem of myself than it was
Not
for
the
the
film
film.
itself, yeah.
But I found myself getting distracted occasionally during it. But I'm going to probably give it a 2, just because of what I feel are pacing issues for it.
But it was still pretty engaging, you're saying, like, for the most part throughout.
Yeah, I just kept thinking of like Waiting for Godot and other works like that, like of a bunch of people sitting around talking about the meaning of life and death. And
No exit.
No exit, damn you.
Yeah,
Yes.
we just talked
Yeah.
about that.
All right. As Scott predicted, I am giving it a 3. I do have the benefit of this has got to have been the 10th or 11th or 12th time I've seen this. And I'm giving my score now because I'm giving it a 3. The reason I wanted to kind of go last and because I'm going to be doing themes and dialogue is because to me those 3 are the most.
They're like the center points of the film.
Yeah. But to me, the theme of this film. Ironically, I mean, I know I'm one of the only people who don't think this is a depressing film, because to me this film is life. You know, you have the plague going on, but you have people worrying about the day to day. You've got Antonius Block worrying about the big existential questions in life. You know, he doesn't want to die until he's got some proof that there is something beyond
Or
here.
one way or another, even if there isn't, he wants to know.
He wants answers, right? He's looking for God. But one of the things he tells Death why he wants to prolong his life is he goes, you know, they've done the crusade thing. And, you know, Bergman, his father was...
Been there, crusaded that.
Bergman's father was a reverend, or priest, not priest, but, you know, like a reverend or something. He was a pastor, a deacon, not he was a holy man. So a
man of the cross.
A lot of, you know, as with most people, you guys can speak to going to parochial school. You know, it does kind of shadow what you do from here on out. So what you have is Antonius Block wants to do one thing of significance because he did his faith. We find out later that it was I believe a monk, or it was another holy man who talked him into going to the Crusades. I mean, Jans basically says, you know, you talked my master into this bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And
now he's a petty criminal.
Yeah, so they went to the Crusades and they experienced death and all sorts of stuff, and death and poisoned wine and
women and snakes.
Women and
sex. Yeah. All that, whatever that was all in that speech.
And he wanted to do something of significance in his life. And to me, that's important because my favorite moment in the movie is when they're having dinner with the strawberries. And Antonius Block is the first time in the entire film he's enjoyed anything. And he's smiling. And I'll get to this when I go to dialogue. But he just appreciates that moment. And at that moment, nothing matters but that moment. And he goes and plays resumes his game with death. And Death is like, why are you smiling? He's like, it's nothing. Like, basically none of your business. I'm taking this with me. This is my moment. And at the end, when he's playing his last round with Death, he realizes the one significant thing he can do is to buy the family, Yoff and Mia and Mikhail, enough time to escape.
Right.
And of course, once we get to the end, everybody's kind of accepts Death. The girl, just like the first time in the whole film, because Jan's saved her from death before, and she's been kind of going through this, and she's the one who kneels before Death and with a smile. And, Antonius Block is still wanting an answer from God, and everybody else kind of seems accepting the fact that, well, here's Death, how we're about to go. But throughout this, you've got different things. You've got Yoff and Mia, and they live in their own little bubble. I mean, everybody kind of lives in their own little bubble,
and they sort of cross over bubbles, if you will.
Yeah,
when they cross paths. Yeah.
So they're like living moment to moment and enjoying everything, and it's really interesting when the Fatulents come into town and you see everybody's reaction, whether they're kneeling. Antonius Block and Jans, they kind of like look at it with like, yeah,
eye rolling.
Like, what a bunch of suckers.
We've been to the Crusades, and the one guy's talking about Death, and Antonius Block's like, yeah, I'm playing just with Death right now. But I find it a really interesting cross section of life, and living in these days now with global warming and all this stuff that's going on. I'm not going to get too political in this, but it's just a matter of, you've got the overshadowing. At the time, it was a plague. There's judgment. And you find out that people live their lives. And Antonius Block is really grappling face to face with his existential crisis. And everybody else is just kind of along for the trip.
Yeah.
And dealing with things, how they deal with it as a human being. And thematically, this is about looking into the unknown. This is asking questions of existence. But this film, to me, thematically, is a really lovely cross-section of life. It is, you've got that part of you that is always wondering what's next. You've got people who are facing that, who are wondering what the next thing is. Generally speaking, people are living their lives. Some people are afraid of the things they hear in the news, or what their preachers are telling them, or whoever, and they're accepting the tension that's coming from somebody. Other people just kind of let it bounce off them. Other people kind of integrate it into like an art form. There's horrific things that are done in the name of it, like they had the witch that apparently had sex with the devil, and Antonius Block wants her to know how to talk to the devil, because he wants to ask the devil about God. And they show mercy on her. And then later on, when there's a plague victim, Jans keeps the girl from giving him water because there's nothing we can do. It's just an interesting where it's just like, they show mercy where they can, where you're
not much mercy to be had.
Well, but the thing is, but they tried to, because she wasn't near death. Jan said, I was thinking about killing all these people, but we really can't save her. But what they do is they give her something to either dull the pain, or to kill her before she burns.
Opiates, probably.
Opiates.
Poppy seeds.
Why not?
That's what they got in the Crusades.
But there's a lot to unpack in this film, and I have seen it several times, and every time I pull something new from it, and I appreciate the little subtle things, funny enough, in it. And this is one of the reasons that is my favorite movies, because it does kind of remind us to appreciate the moments we have, and even because there's always going to be some existential crisis in the world, or some personal thing that we're dealing with.
To burn the witches where you find them. And
then you got to burn the witches where you find them, and, kill the people who, no, I'm just kidding. Don't kill anybody. I'm a pacifist, but thematically, it is a film about life. There's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to put it over to you guys, but that's my merging of the plot and themes. I hope it made sense.
3 for you. Are you guys?
No, Exhibit 3 and a 1.
Changing?
No, I'm still
3 and a 1 for themes.
Yeah, you basically hat switch into themes, but I see it like, yes, of course they cross over, so you're giving a 3 to plot and a 1 to themes.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of hard for me to discuss the plot without discussing the themes.
Sure.
Fair enough.
And that's exactly why I'm giving it a 2 for plot, because it's more of a vehicle for philosophical discussions than it is necessarily
A story
an
unto
engaging
itself.
narrative.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, did you want to go on about themes as well now?
Chris actually did a fairly good job at it, specifically when he said there's a lot to unpack
Yeah,
here.
it's very dense with stuff,
And
sure.
I know that this is the first time seeing it, but I'm aware of the fact that there is a lot written about this movie, and there is far more in it than my feeble mind can piece together. But it's they handle a lot of exploration of handling of death, justification of actions in the face of death, existing in a world which is falling apart. It's a fairly impressive movie. It reminds me of a lot of other existential work looking into meaning of life.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. Like, yeah, you covered a lot. There was a lot I got to cover, and you guys both did cover a lot. And this film is packed a lot of things. Like I said, it's mostly made up, to me at least, vignettes of the discussions of like, what does it mean? Like, is there a God? And if so, how does that change how I should behave, etc.? And what if there's not? And it reminded me actually quite a bit, even though I know this movie came first, of Stalker, which we covered this year for Halloween, where it's just a lot of people sitting around struggling with existential crisis of faith or just existential crisis in general. Or these struggles, at least, if not crisis, we'll say.
In fact, I think
he probably
the
took some
director of
cues.
Stalker was a big
Tarnowski,
fan of
yeah, and I could totally see it.
Bergman.
But yeah, I mean,
Bergman.
I don't see how you can give themes a 0. Like, it explores so much, and without really committing, like, a la the characters themselves, they don't really find an answer. They might find peace, but not quite an answer to the actual questions that they've been searching for the whole time.
They also cover the nature of love, the nature of
exactly.
there's a ton here.
There's so much stuff thrown in there, and it's
the love between man and a woman, the love between parents and a child. What the bridge between like the real and the spiritual, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
In many different instances, and like the juggler has this kind of connection to a spiritual world that like Antonius seems to really covet. Like he would kill to be able to see visions like this.
Yeah, to have
and he just doesn't see them.
Abilities, if you will.
But he has demonstrable proof of afterlife because
he sees death. But yeah, like
unless that's a elaborate metaphor, but regardless.
But I mean, I think it all is an elaborate metaphor, right? But like, there's an interesting thing to be said about like the behavior of, as you mentioned earlier, Ian, the behavior of humans in desperate times. I think that's kind of a prescient point of this movie is like there are certain human truths to be taken out of this in times of like great despair. You have the group of people that are like flagellating themselves. You have Antonius. Yeah, you have Antonius. Just in his kind of existential crisis. You have all the different forms of people when they're faced with things that they can't control and things like that. I completely agree. There are a ton of themes running throughout this film. They're all, I think, really well done. I don't think there was one that I was like, they've kind of fucked that.
None of which overpowers one another either.
Yeah.
I would say it was a very a definite move, like a very nice balancing act there.
I am going to postulate though that in order to solve climate change, people should start flagellating themselves.
Yes, of course. That's always the answer.
It seemed to work against the Black Death. So,
well, we don't have Black Death anymore, do we?
Sure.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Well,
boom, rock solid correlation.
Won't get into current events and current potential pandemics.
I mean,
Anyways.
Black Death has made a little bit of a comeback recently, so
Not enough people are flagellating themselves.
That's true. He's got it, nailed it.
There may be a correlation.
Yes.
But I think that's one's all
one
right,
for
right?
themes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. You can't not.
Yeah, it's impossible.
One thing I do want to say, that we a few months ago we reviewed Apocalypse Now, and this film, like Apocalypse Now, and indeed, the themes and the images, these are the most, for lack of a better word, parodied in.
Yeah, I mean, the chess with death thing has been used and reused so many times.
Lines that in this and Apocalypse Now that are taken out of context. That people think, oh, we're saying this because it's cool. But like Apocalypse Now, when you put these little lines
back into the original full context.
In context, yeah.
For sure.
Like I had said before with the Duvall's line, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It smells like victory. I mean, there's a whole when you put that into context, it actually has a huge meaning to it. And there's so many things, and this is one of those films I really wanted to bring up that is so. It's a lot of times it's taken out of context, and sometimes it's communicated well, but a lot of times it is like Apocalypse Now, where things will be like cool that you're taking away from the meaning.
Sure.
Is this the original like Chess with Death thing? I wonder if there was something before.
It's probably the most modern, well-known usage of it.
I mean, people have been playing chess against the death for millennia.
Yeah.
So,
That's since chess existed, I assume.
Yeah. Before then, they were rolling.
I mean, I was going to do it in style, but to answer, like, it's probably the most recognizable, iconic depiction of that element. Yes.
Anyway.
Okay, I just want to bring that.
All around
I feel you.
And it is to Ian with Antagonist.
Well,
yeah.
Obviously, I mean, death is personified here. He takes his damn time, though. Yeah, I would imagine that Death would want to get that game out of the way, but no, they're like, we'll play a couple hands, you'll live for a couple more days, I'll show up again.
I'll meet you on the tavern.
I guess he's a busy guy. I don't know. He's
doing the Black Plague.
Guy, exactly.
But nonetheless,
people to murder.
Yeah. You got trees to saw down.
Yeah.
But however, I like the depiction of, in a sense, courting death, but also, in a sense, like life, especially if you're a knight in the Crusades, you're just biding time until death comes around and finally beat you, because you're not going to win that chess game against death, no matter how skilled you are. And I think that he is...
Or even if you try to cheat, you still can't.
Yeah, he knows it all.
He didn't try to... Death cheated him.
No, but Antonius knocks to pieces, and he's like,
he's like, I remember where they are.
Yeah, I know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, sorry, Jaden. Since you mentioned Apocalypse Now, and I agree with your point as well, that it's a horror and death has a face, let's make a friend of that face. Because if you don't, surely to be feared. So, as personified, basically, again, the most iconic depiction of this death as a psychopomp. And even within, the fiction or the story of the film, they go to a church where a guy's painting, he's doing the mural of the very famous, that kind of art style at the time. So it's, and I would say, again, tied into themes, it's struggling with the existential nature of something like the plague. So how does that change human behavior you were mentioning earlier? How do people respond and react to it? So yes, I think that, of course, both of those things, death personified literally in this film, and also the specter of the struggles and the existentialism both combine to be a very, very effective antagonist.
Just imagine you spent 10 years in the Middle East fighting a holy war.
Bloody wars, yeah.
You've lost your faith. You get back home. Plague.
Guess what?
You wash up on shore, and death is like, yo, what's up? And
I'm here too.
Chess, maybe, for a little bit?
Yeah, it's just completely world weary and all. But no, it's a funny but still valid point. And I'm just saying, I think all of that stuff, or at least those two things, the most major ones, and then the subtleties beneath them, all combine to form a very effective antagonist for all characters in this film.
It's almost a ticking clock, in a sense, except that through a game that he can't win.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But he does... what I like about this conceit is that he does kind of control it a little bit more than the ticking clock, right? It's not high noon. It's when...
Your move at the next tavern or whatever.
Right. Yeah. When I want to slow things down, I can make moves that I know will make the game longer. I know I can't win at the end, but I can try to
prolong at least enough. Yeah, for sure.
How long this goes. I think it's really interesting, and I completely agree with you. Death, antagonist, and does a really good job. I'm impressed with Bill and Ted too, how much they made Death look like. This is the first time I'm seeing this movie too. And I was
really?
Oh shit, he looks just like Death from Bill and Ted Bogus Journey.
Very,
looks just
very
like
spot on for sure.
So obviously a direct reference, but a really good one, I think. And I mean that's all I have to say about that. I think Death is a great antagonist, and you guys have said everything that I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think the way it's handled portrayed is a lot better in this film than it could be in you've seen in other films, but it works quite well, and definitely a strong one.
Right.
And what I like about it is that Antonius Block thinks Death has the answers. But to get him in the game, he appeals to his hubris. He's just like,
True.
I heard you play
you're an
chess.
amazing chess player. Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, and he's like, I'm very good at it. So it's like he starts off with that, and at the end,
Sure, he baits him.
at the end, when Antonius Block basically sacrifices himself and everybody else to let the family go away, he's basically, when he's letting the family get away, he's like, nobody escapes you, nothing escapes you. And the last thing he says to Antonius Block, he's like, he basically asks him if he has any answers, and Death goes like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like probably the most horrific thing for him to hear.
Sure. But he has that one small victory, but letting the family at least escape.
But it's the only answer that makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's the only answer there is possible. Yeah, exactly.
For now.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. I'm giving him 1. I just like the. I agree with everything you said. I just also like the way they both.
I hear you.
All
right.
One's all around, and it's to Scott with protagonist.
Indeed, it is. So, I think it's more of a collective, like certainly an ensemble cast, and I guess it's like a mark of Bergman, kind of, because The Magician was kind of similar as well, in a sense where you want to say Antonius and his squire, right? Certainly they're main characters, but I think they meet the family, or the actor family, early on enough, and then they're there for like almost the whole journey. It's not like they disappear or anything like that. And then I think they form like the core of it, and then we'll get to secondary after this, obviously, but anyone else who isn't them, like the blacksmith and his wife and all, like they're the secondary characters. But I guess you maybe make an argument differently, but to me, it's basically the 5 of them: Antonius, his squire, Jans, Joff, Mia, and their young son. Even though he's not really a part of it, but he's there as part of their story. So I think it's the core of them, and we just mentioned it that towards the end, the final move is Antonius, basically sacrificing himself, giving in, finally relenting and being like, all right, you're going to win. I knew that anyways, but at least I had enough time to have the family escape and they can have their lives until death comes for them. So I think I'm going to call it those 5, and I think each actor did a great job. I certainly think the Squire was my favorite character because a lot of his lines and like just his behavior and like his sort of world-weary mindset of everything that's happening. And he's sort of resigned to it all. He's like, I'm just along for the ride. But he does have insightful things to say, which we'll get to as well. So I'm going to call it them collectively, and I think they all worked quite well. They all sort of balanced each other out. They had nice interactions with little, when it's the squire and the husband and et cetera, like swapping around. So yeah, I think maybe not the strongest, but certainly a damn solid one, and all the characters and actors did a good job to sell you on the believability of the setting and what was happening. So
I think that I don't know. You know what? I had like 2 characters in mind before you mentioned 5 of them, and you make a good point for all 5 of them. But the original 2 characters that I had in mind were Antonius and Joff, the actor, because those are the 2 that are always kind of center stage anytime they're on camera.
Kind of, but not always. But
like Jans, the squire, he's like kind of there to bail Joff out of trouble, and he's kind of like a joke in certain points. Like I don't know. I could see him as a protagonist, and you make a good argument for it. But
I think he's more well-rounded.
I didn't view him as that originally. I don't know. Like it's not necessarily like have to do with well-rounded. It's like, is it his story? I view it as in he is part of Antonius' story. And
that's also pretty good.
Yeah, like Joff has his own. No, I mean Joff is fucking lower class than that squire, man. But yeah, like I feel like Joff has his own, and everybody else is kind of based around them to me, or at least was in my first viewing. And I'm looking forward to see what the rest of you guys have to say, because Scott, you make a good point, and I might change my opinion.
It's funny because I was like, you make a good point too. So with that, why don't you gentlemen talk?
I have difficulty because you're right. It is an ensemble piece. I would just the crusty juggler, that Harpo Marx looking motherfucker. He certainly is a main character in this, and perhaps the knight as well. I don't know if the squire is. Even though he is perhaps one of the most interesting characters in there, and for just sheer cynicism and worldliness.
Yeah.
But he seems more of almost a narrator, observer type character than agency on his own. So
good call.
I might put the knight and the juggler
As the two main.
main characters there. Also, the fact that someone pointed out earlier that the roles they play, that the juggler himself is sort of between worlds, whereas the one white pant, one black, black and white, splitting him down the middle, existing in that he has the visions, and then you have the person searching out some kind of meaning,
wishing he had visions and something.
While playing chess against death, ironically, but he can't find meaning anywhere. And so, you said you felt a kinship to the squire. I felt a kinship to the knight, because aren't we all just trying to do something with our lives before we lose that chess battle?
I agree with you and Steve-O. Steve, your assessments were right on. I think Steve-O, when you said before that Yoff has a gift that Antonius Block covets. I mean, it's like Yoff sees the unseeable, but kind of marvels at it and integrates it into his life and his performance. Whereas it's like Antonius is staring at it there's no wonder to it. He just wants a definitive answer to it. And they do form a really lovely juxtaposition. And I agree with you guys. It's to me, that it is Yoff and Antonius. So
It was well said.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
I think you guys could convince me. I was good.
It's a one either way.
Yeah,
but-
exactly. So I'll just speak more about it when we get to secondary. But yeah, I think as you guys talked it out and as I was sort of reflecting upon it, that they are they're the kernel upon which everything else revolves around. So while you're right, the Squire, Jan's is a really good character, but he's not quite a protagonist, or at least a main protagonist. He's sort of attached to Antonius.
The best actual example of that is when the smith and the sleazy actor are arguing. He's just eating and whispering things and just
true.
observing. That's his role.
He's like the peanut gallery, but you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost felt like he was attached more to Yoff in this movie. I know he's
Technically
Antonius' squire, but I feel like he has that as from the moment he saves his life in the inn or whatever. They have that attachment that kind of goes with something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Especially in film, you see it a lot where somebody saves somebody else's life and now they're attached forever, and that really comes through without ever being said.
And Yoff leaves him to die. Oh, that's...
Yoff does leave him to die, but sometimes you gotta save your wife.
You gotta cut your losses, man. Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna give them. I think you guys turned me on that.
He would still be dancing like a bear to this day.
I mean, he was dancing through death like a bear at the end of the movie.
Until the plague hit that tavern. But yeah, I think I'm gonna call it that. But I'm still giving it a 1 either way.
Okay.
excellent. And I believe it's to Steve-O with supporting characters.
up the rest
now
of them.
this is now this is having to say all those rest of those characters that we just mentioned.
Sure.
Jan's, Mia, Yoff's wife, who was I thought really good. The girl, I guess, is the other one who did a fine acting job but didn't get very many lines and got basically
She sort of represents
yelled at
some kind
and
of innocent
threatened the
thing.
entire fucking movie. Poor her. But anyway, then there was Scott and Scott with his SKAT.
the shadier actor.
And
Obviously.
who was the shady actor. And Lisa, the blacksmith's wife, who got stolen away by Scott for a little while.
Or she seduced him. Your
For a
mileage may vary.
Yeah, oh, no,
That
you're-
chicken seduction.
First of all, you're absolutely right. She seduced the shit out of an
Just
actor and then ran away from her husband and then came back and was like, this guy totally seduced me. Why don't you murder him? And he was like, yeah, I'm down with that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought all the characters were good. They all had their own little thing to say about the human condition and the philosophy
Spot
of
on.
existentialism and things like that. So I thought they all played their little part really well. They were all fairly well rounded as characters. They kind of had their own stories.
Even if there were smaller arcs, there were still arcs.
but you could kind of establish a backstory for them based on what they did, what all of their characters were. So I really appreciated that, and I'm going to give this a 1.
Chris, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I've only seen the 2 Bergman films that you have shown me so far. I kind of have a feeling that Bergman has female archetypes in his works. because I'm remembering a little bit of The Magician, and I might be completely wrong about this, but it felt like some of those female characters were similar to The Magician. I might be wrong, but I don't know. Could you
elaborate on all that?
Let me elaborate.
Well, the thing is, like any director, he's got his own troupe. So, B.B. Anderson, who played, who was in The Magician, she played Max von Sydow's wife in The Magician. She played Mia in this. Gunnar Bjornsten, who played Joff, yeah. No, Jans. I'm sorry. But as far as female archetypes, what do you mean specifically with?
It might just be that same actress has a similar acting style, and that's why I feel that.
It feels like there might have been like there's like the one like steady like good wife but strong like female actress, and there's like the like kind of withering. But I don't really remember The Magician very well. Like it seemed like in this you had basically the three women leads, or leads
characters at least.
But it was like Lisa, who was like the seductress, like
temptress,
strong female character who like overpowers the men that she's with. You have Mia, who's like the good wife and like the kind of pure but like smart,
supportive,
like intelligent,
partner,
supportive partner. And then you have
just girl,
like just named girl, who's kind of this
naive,
meek,
innocent,
very meek character.
Well, she's mute, so I mean,
she's not mute. She talks at the end of the movie.
She has one line when Jack shows up at the castle. She does not speak before that at all. Yeah.
For all
I see what you mean. Like, sort of like the
really talk much.
So, because as archetypes, I'm sitting here.
I'm just talking about this movie. By the
way. I know you are, and I'm trying to listen because he does have a whole acting troupe. But I'm just trying to figure out.
It felt familiar to his Magician work, even though I should have done a little bit more research on it. Apologize, but that's what I just said. That it might just be have a sense of having the same actress. Just what reminded me.
I'll give him a lot of credit though. He has more range in his female characters than a lot of people making films in that era did.
Sure.
Actually, to Steve-O's point, there's another film of mine, another film that you made? Yeah, that I absolutely love. It, and this one is kind of depressing. It's called The Winter's Light, and basically it takes place between 3 hours on a Sunday service, and it's 90 minutes, so it's basically virtual real time. And there is the priest or the deacon or has a crisis of faith, and the woman who works with him is kind of like his rock. And so what I'm saying is, in all this film and The Magician, there is always like a female character or two that is there to not play second fiddle, but acts as partially a guide. Like there is there isn't like even in The Magician, you had Sidow barely took the part of the girl where he basically had 3 lines in the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it is always a really nice give and take. Your mileage may vary on different films. Like, I won't get into the other, like In a Mirror Darkly or Persona, but, with regard to this style, there is an archetype. I don't know if it's quite cut and dry archetype, but the dynamic, there's that dynamic archetype.
Well, it's something I'm definitely going to look for, at when I see more Bergman films.
I gotcha.
Which I do want to check out a lot more. He's a good mix.
Either way, I don't have much more to add, but I think I do agree that the secondary supporting cast was quite well done, and got to give him a 1.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so and I'm giving it a 1 too, and
You'll 1 too.
Are you?
I am as well. Yeah, and I already spoke about archetypes, so I won't bore you with that. But it's on to me with dialogue, and
bores with dialogue.
I'm going to bore you with dialogue. But my favorite line probably in any movie is that scene I was talking about where they're having the supper of the strawberries and milk, and Antonius Block, this is his perfect moment.
Are you reading this off of your Facebook because you just posted it there the other day?
No, I'm not reading it off. I'm going to.
I know exactly what
it starts off with, I shall remember this moment, the silence, the twilight, the bowl of strawberries, the bowl of milk. Your faces in the evening light, Mikhail asleep, Yoff with his lyre. I shall try to remember our talk. I shall carry this memory carefully in my hands as if it were a bowl brimful of fresh milk. It'll be a sign to me and a great sufficiency. or in this translation, he says satisfaction. And what I love about that is, to me, that is the thesis statement of the film. And I did not do it nearly as eloquently as Max von Sydow, and I'm not going to.
Sure.
But this is one of those things where, to me, is this thesis statement of the film. And on that alone, I'd give it a 1. And I think, to me, that is probably one of the my favorite things ever put to paper. But as far as the rest of the dialogue goes, he has this unique, he can bring genuine laughs. And it's not.
I was going to say that, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's not. No, he's not being ironic about it. I mean, these are just people. I mean, everybody's got their own little thing. Like, Jans, he's always like quick with a wit, and he's always got something.
He's got some word-weary thing.
Yeah, he's got some word-weary thing, and you have to the juxtaposition of Antonius and Joff. They basically, in a weird way, say the same things, except Antonius is more pontificating, and Joff is kind of like I said, integrating it into his everyday life. So he's saying these things, and his wife's like, "Oh, you're so sweet, your visions, you're so cute. Can we got to get going?" Yeah. So there is in its stoicism, and there is a natural quality to it. It's a weird thing where it does seem like everybody's in a weird way pontificating, but at the same time, it's all very natural. God, I'm sorry. I'm going to shut up.
No,
I'm giving it a 1, so please talk.
It's your question, and you want to dialogue, but I'm just agreeing 100% because there's moments of levity to it, and again, they're not forced. They don't seem like as if they're like sarcastic unto themselves. Like there's genuine moments of uplifting, of joy in this film, and then of course there's like you said, the stoic, more somber reflections and interactions and conversations, and yeah, it all flows like up and down throughout, and the tone. While the tone might change, it doesn't jarringly switch at any point. It's more, again, like you said, natural, sort of just organically flows from one vignette into the next. Like, for example, one standout or example might be is that when Yalf and his wife are doing like sort of the song and dance, they're performing for the village or whatever, and then the flagellants come through and like they're doing their thing, and the whole village stops and people are like kneeling down in sort of awe and or fear or both, right? So, but that it doesn't like jar with itself. It just sort of transitions into that, and a lot of other scenes are like that too.
Burn the witch.
Well, what would you do if a bunch of people showed up in your driveway whipping themselves?
While you're putting on a play, people just like whipping themselves through the theater.
Ran them out of the village
like,
or something.
Fuck?
But no, I'm just saying like all that just to back up. Like yes, dialogue.
You don't mess with those people.
We'll see.
Yeah,
if a bunch of flagellants show up
do what they're
going to
do.
We'll see what happens. But
I hope they leave soon.
Yeah,
but
let them do it. Get out of there as soon as possible.
Post on our Facebook. We'll arrange a meeting.
Come to not my house. Come to see.
I just want to make a point. What you said is, as a person who pontificates regularly, it is hard to do natural, and I think they did.
And they did it.
I actually really like the philosophical dialogues out in this.
Yeah, I thought that they did a great job in all those, especially the conversations between Antonius and Death were really good. The conversations between Jans and the
black
criminal,
the former priest.
Yeah, the former guy who had like conversations. I say like him yelling at that guy and like getting out his anger about like how he'd lost the last like however many years of his life because of this, and like taking it out on him were really good. There's just a lot that was really good in terms of dialogue in this film, and it was all like it seems like it's all like Bergman getting out his rage about something, whatever specifically he had to say about modern society, like at the time that he was making this film through the lens of, medieval, and the time of the plague and things like that. But like, I thought that the dialogue was spot on, really good, and I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah. Like I said, it was engaging, thoughtful, made you think, but also again, showed moments of just living life. So yeah, definitely a strong 1 from me.
Yep.
Ian? All 1? Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Ian, why don't you continue on with style?
It's a Bergman film.
I knew you were going to fucking say that. You're like Kubrick or something, right?
No, more so than Kubrick.
No, I'm just saying
it's a Bergman film.
You say Bergman, I know Kubrick.
Very Bergman.
If you like Bergman style, you like this. If you don't like Bergman style, you won't like this. I like Bergman style, so I'm giving this a 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's very striking. There's so many classic images from this film, and it it's even still today, it's impressive. Now, granted, like I said, I have seen it before, not as much as Chris and you guys apparently. I'm finding it odd, first of all, real quickly.
Well, hold on really quick. What year did this come out?
57, I believe. Right, so I just found it odd that you, E, and Steve, this is really the first time you've seen it.
Yeah,
all the way
I've
through?
never seen it.
I mean,
before.
cool enough. But either way, I'm saying from shot one on the beach to the very last shot of the film, especially the last shot of Yop's vision of them dancing with death in the distance, every single frame is fucking awesome. And like the black and white like adds so much to it. It would lose something if they ever colorized it. I don't know if they ever tried or wanted to, but they shouldn't. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. For what it is, and I guess I'll leave the soundtrack.
He could have colorized it.
It would, but yeah.
If they chose.
Yeah, no, it works black and white perfectly as is, and every shot is awesome, at least in my estimation. And perhaps I'll leave the soundtrack to you guys, but I will also say in this instance, it's fucking amazing as well. It matches perfectly. You can go on with that.
I'm gonna leave most of the soundtrack stuff to Chris because I'm sure he has something to say about it, or at least I hope he does. Otherwise, I'll be.
I will, but go ahead and say what.
Go on though.
But what I will say is that like this movie really reminded me of. I mean, it's brilliant and it's specifically Bergman. For sure, you can tell. Like again, I've only seen maybe 3 Bergman movies, including The Magicians, which I saw for the first time when we watched it, and this one, which I just saw for the first time. But it really reminded me of The Twilight Zone, and I just looked up when The Twilight Zone came out, and it first dropped in 1959, and I would be shocked
Rod Serling
if
definitely saw this film.
Wasn't watching Bergman movies while he was like coming up with
100%.
like, the framing and stuff of the Twilight while he was making Twilight Zone. I'd be shocked.
Picture a man playing chess.
Yeah, it just has those like music cues. It has those like close ups, so like that's fast close ups and things like that, and like these like really striking shots along the beach and things like that. Like there's a lot that like gets taken from movies like this, specifically this, but also movies like this, and not only The Twilight Zone, but like a bunch of other things that come after it. But
its influence is profound.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly Bill and Ted. Bogus Journey, at least.
Even the Animaniacs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. But like Bergman had this. You don't even need to know him really well
to recognize
style, after seeing this movie that he had this gigantic effect on film afterwards, because you can see it like in a lot of things that came afterwards, like even up to things that we loved this year, Midsommar and especially Lighthouse.
Yes.
These two directors are gigantic fans of Bergman and actually have it. If you ever want to check out them talking about like fanning over Bergman, A24 is a podcast, and they were both talking about it. But yeah, he's been a huge influence from directors from the day that he made this movie until today.
Today, yeah, exactly.
And that's all I have to say about that. A great style overall. Chris, talk about music and whatever else you want to talk about.
Okay, there's 2 things I wanted to mention prior to the music. Is number one, when the one of my favorite shots in the whole thing, and this is something that I don't think he came up with the shot, but he uses it really effectively, is when Yolf and Mia are on stage in their costumes, and you can hear the flatulence coming in. They both freeze in horror, and the way the camera moves towards them always gives me chills. Which I'll segue into music, because the use of Agnus Dei, and I wrote a blog on it, last year, the year before, and you've heard it 1,000 times. It's from the Middle Ages, the dun 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 dun. But and of course, the flatulence are going to be, doing that.
They're going to show up to
sing
that.
it, yeah.
I keep thinking you're saying flatulence.
It's flatulence, right?
It's flagellance.
Flagellance. Sorry. I'm really screwing that up. I'm sorry.
In the Middle Ages, people just fart at each other.
I said flatulence. Did I say flatulence? I didn't say flatulence.
Flagellance. It's
flagellance.
It's flagellance.
Yes.
All right.
Let's be clear.
Because I'm trying not to say flatulence.
Well, you just failed.
I did.
Anyway.
But the use of Agnus Dei throughout the the flogging, right?
The flogging.
I fart when I flog. Sorry.
Me too.
But no, the use of Agnus Dei throughout, I think it's in there. It's kind of like the Easter egg in a lot of the score.
Mm.
But the other thing I took note of was the when Jans is talking to the painter, and he's like, "Why?" The painter's paying like the Black Death. He's like, "Why are you? Here's death," and he's dancing with these people. He's like, "Why are you paying such horrific things?" He goes, to scare people, I have to remind them, what do you say? I have to remind them they're all going to die. And in the Middle Ages, why the books, the literature, we know more about hell than we do about heaven is because that's what got people in the church was fear.
Sure.
And we wanted to find out who is going to hell this week. And,
they even said, so I'm sorry, Chris, that's reminded me.
Yeah.
Dialogue. They said, we took fear and carved an idol on it and called it God.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a lot of what we got from the Middle Ages. So I'm going to say I agree with everything you guys said. Style.
Again, there's zero way you can give style 0 to any Bergman film,
I just wanted,
especially
there's
this
just
one.
something I noticed because I'm like, that's a nice little touch to call that on. So so we're all giving it a 1, and I'm really embarrassed about the flagellating thing. All right,
you'll have to go flagellate yourself later.
Go flatulate
for
yourself.
calling it flatulence.
Don't worry, I'll be flatulating later. Just kidding.
Go on.
Highbrow and lowbrow.
Keep it classy,
here.
buddy.
Always do. And Scott, would you recommend?
Hold on. Yes, go on.
It is me, right? Yeah, yes, I would absolutely recommend Seventh Seal. It is an iconic film for a very good reason, as we just talked out, and it's something that has never, its sort of imprint has never really gone away from film and even TV to an extent, I would say. The influence is so broad, so overarching that it's still studied. Again, I saw it twice in 2 different film classes back in college, and for very good reason, like I said. So yes, I absolutely would. It's shorter film. It's like an hour and a half and change. So it's not like a big commitment, but it is still resonant. It deserves to be seen, has something to say, and is something you can both enjoy in terms of like it as a film and as a story and its philosophy. So
I studied You've Got Mail twice in college because
what fucking classes have you taken?
Because I had a communications degree.
Yeah.
Don't do that, people. Don't do that. You
PSA from
Anyway, regardless of your major, Seventh Seal, yes, I highly recommend it. Check it out. It is a fantastic movie, and that's all I have to say about that. I suppose I've said everything else.
Nope.
While you are idling away your time and waiting for death, this is, I guess, a useful thing to say. If you don't want to pursue anything greater, which I think that the Knight would be agree with me on.
mentally commentating on his recommendation, Jens.
Perhaps this is a way to see God.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you.
If you're gonna waste your time
The
waiting for
topics here aren't new; they were
Sure.
discussed quite a bit throughout. This is heavy existentialist piece, but I think it has the unique Bergman spin on old worries about the world. So it's worth seeing.
I recommended it. This was a birthday request of mine. I told the guys, I'm going to be 50 in January. I'm going to do the Seventh Seal.
Before
Now
he
that you're halfway through life.
I hope I'm halfway through life.
Well,
Another 50 years.
If you're lucky, you're halfway.
before he dances with the Reaper.
But another 50 years, you all are going to have to endure me.
I'm sorry, you only have a pawn and a rook left. It's the king.
I'm knocking over the pieces, but anyway.
Okay, so that means I'm giving. Well, I give it a 10. The only thing we all disagreed on is that you all give it 2 for the plot.
You knocked the point off the
And-
plot, sure.
Yeah, you knocked a point off for plot. But otherwise we all give it perfect scores, and it comes out to a 9.25.
Yeah, that's pretty damn.
Absolutement.
It's up there. Yeah, for sure. It's still, like I said, classic. Deserves to be seen. Still is something to be said, and you can study a lot about it.
Yeah, this has historical value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if no other reason, you see this and you'll get a shit ton of pop cultural references for the last 50 or
It's worth it
60
for that
years.
alone.
You will understand why Wacko, the whole thing with the Swedish meatball eating contest.
But you still want to understand the fingerprints thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, gentlemen, do we have anything else to anybody want to say? Okay, I've been Chris Morgan, and gentlemen, let me say first, thank you so much for indulging me. I'm here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
I'm already playing a game of Scrabble against death.
Scott
I'm
Thurlow.
gonna go dance with the devil in the pale moonlight.
And Stephen Ormosi.
Checkmate.
Good night.
We'll see you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?